I've been sick for the last 2 days and still kind of recovering. It's this kind of flu that just wipes you out. But our kids have been cooped up at home and have been destroying everything. Hi guys.
Yeah.
And they needed to get out of the house.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
So I'm going to continue trying to do this review of these lenses. We'll see how much energy I have and what sort of compositions we can find. This video is possible thanks to the good folks at the Fuji X Series Pro Rental Service. I've linked to them below and would encourage you to check them out if you have Fuji gear you need to rent. In this video I'm comparing 5 of Fuji's best portrait lenses for its X Series. The 56 1.2 normal and APD version, the 60 2.4 macro, the 90 f2, and the 50 to 140 2.8. You know, I know this is just a lens comparison test, but I'm the type of person that I can't just take tests for the sake of taking tests. If the photo's not worth taking, I mean, I'm not gonna put it up on the vlog. So it has to be aesthetically pleasing as well as a good opportunity to test these lenses. Okay, I got my dog placed where I want him to be, so now it's the first of several shots I'm going to take. We'll start with the 50 to 140. Shooting fully extended at the 140. Stay wide open. All these shots will be wide open for the bokeh test. I'm going to show these photos in quick succession, otherwise this video would be forever long. Feel free to pause the video or download the photos from the link in the description to look at them in more detail. Got a drone flying somewhere in the vicinity and BB's scared to death of drones. Okay, the dog shot. That's good to go. I also brought something else. I just want to try it. I don't really know where I'm going to put it yet. My mother-in-law got me this for Christmas last year because it was on my Amazon wish list. And she thought it was kind of weird, but she thought it would be funny too. She didn't know why I had it on my wish list, but I haven't had a chance to use it. But now seems like a good opportunity, as good an opportunity as any. So this is what I brought along. Be much easier if I just printed me out some lens whatever evaluation sheets, whatever those people who are technical use. This is way more fun and interesting. I don't know if any of these shots will be any good, and I'm not even sure if they're going to give you the best idea of the bokeh on these various lenses. I think they will. This thing got a little beat up tonight. I dropped it a few times. This is a lot of work, by the way. I'm not gonna test sharpness of these lenses because, I mean, who cares? I mean, sharpness these days, I feel like lenses are almost too sharp, to be honest with you. At least for portraiture, which is, you know, 90% of what I do. So if you care what lens is sharper than which, you'll have to go somewhere else. I think I have a shot idea that I'm thinking about here. Bokeh balls. The main things I noticed as far as image quality. I've spoken about this before, but the 50-140 has a characteristic nervous or jittery bokeh, but it's extremely subtle and most people only really see it if they're looking for it. The 60mm 2.4 definitely has the least smooth bokeh, but it's still pleasant in my opinion. To be honest, I was really surprised to see this lens contend so well against its bigger brothers. It seems to have less chromatic aberration than the 56-1.2. It focuses almost as quickly as you'll see here in a moment, and it's lighter. Although it's classified as a macro lens, I really hate it for macro. But if I was just getting into the Fuji X system, was a bit budget conscious, and I wanted a solid portrait lens to get me going, I would have no problem picking up this guy used for around $400, confident it will produce excellent results. I still feel like the 56-1.2 has the best bokeh of the bunch, but the APD and the non-APD versions both, to me, seem to have slightly more chromatic aberration than others wide open. You see a green fringe also in these bokeh balls. Its focus speeds, as you'll see here in a minute, are also not as impressive as its larger brothers. As far as the differences between the APD and the non, it's extremely difficult to see unless pixel peeping. In my mind, it's absolutely not worth $500 extra to gain some barely perceptible smoothness at the loss of phase detection at lower light and lower light gathering ability in general. I'm blown away by the quality of the 90mm f2. As a portrait lens, I feel like the quality of bokeh is on par with the 56mm 1.2s. I see less chromatic aberration, at least in these silly tests, and it's nice because it keeps more face and focus front to back within that depth of field, even wide open. I really do feel like this might be a good portrait lens option for me, and I'm certainly putting it on the list for future purchase. And now I'm camping. Guys, it's a little ridiculous how long this video has taken me, but when you're as crazy busy as I am, you take whatever the day gives you, and right now that's a few minutes here in the morning while we're camping. So let's talk about some focusing speeds, and then we'll wrap it up with some conclusions. I performed these tests on the X-T20. As expected, the 56-1.2 lenses are a bit sluggish, and while speeds were similar with the APD version, I did miss focus occasionally. This is the well-documented price you pay in addition to an extra $500 for shooting with this lens. Surprisingly, the 60-2.4 performed slightly better, at least for me, than the 56-1.2. This is contrary to all that I've read, which always places the 60mm as the slowest focusing portrait lens in the Fuji lineup. I'm not sure if it was just my conditions or something to do with the X-T20, but I was pleasantly surprised by its performance. The 90mm was snappier, but not as much as I expected based on all the things I've heard about this lens. And the 50-140 was pretty much the same as the 90mm, a little snappier, but not as much as I expected. Look, I know that these tests aren't like super scientific, but I want to explain a little bit of how I derived my values. Last night in front of the campfire, I just pulled up these focus speed tests in Premiere, and I just counted the number of frames it took from tap on the X-T20 to in focus, and for 10 to 15 focusing attempts in both directions. The big takeaway for me here is that yes, there may be some slight differences in focusing speeds, but it's very small. And granted, very small focusing speeds might matter when you're focusing on children who are running around, or if you're doing some sports photography. But if you're a portrait photographer, that may not matter to you that much. One other thing that I should probably mention that I'm sure I'll get in the comments are folks who will say, why didn't you test the 50 2.0? A lot of people claim that it has the snappiest autofocus of the portrait lenses. Yeah, I probably should have tested that one as well. I don't have a great excuse other than I forgot to ask Fuji for that one, and I just don't own it. But I've heard that it has really snappy autofocus, so maybe that's something worth looking at if that's a concern to you. I think performance of the aperture rings on these lenses is worth mentioning briefly. All of these lenses share a third stop distance between each click. But one common complaint about the 56 1.2, and one that I share, is that the detents are not deep enough, making it fairly easy to bump the aperture inadvertently. The issue is largely resolved in the 90mm, which to my hand takes the perfect amount of pressure to move. Something else which is helpful in the 90mm is that there seems to be a slightly deeper detent on each stop, with a shallower detent in each third stop. As far as conclusions, guys, when I started this project, I really thought that I would have some stronger conclusions, and that I would have some really great recommendations to offer you. But the differences are a lot smaller than I thought they would be. I hope this doesn't sound like a cop-out, but it's probably just going to come down to price, focal range, degree to which weather resistance is important to you, because image quality and performance does not have as large of deltas as what I think a lot of people want you to think they do in these lenses. At least that's from my perception. First off, if you're a wedding or an event photographer, or if you just want the flexibility that a zoom lens can offer you, along with weather resistance, and you don't mind spending as much money as it would cost to buy a brand new X-T2, and maybe if you want a little bit of image stabilization, rest assured that if you invest in the 50 to 140, you will not be sacrificing much on the image quality side, and you'll have a highly performant workhorse of a lens that you can rely on. But if you do a lot of headshot work, or if you want tight focal range with great compression and ideal depth of field for low apertures, if you need some weather resistance, and if you're concerned about chromatic aberration, then the 90mm really is going to be your best bet. But if you don't need weather resistance, if you want the best bokeh that Fuji can provide, although it's only slightly better, but if you don't want to skimp on the bokeh, if you need low light performance, and if you want maybe a little bit more environment, then the 56 1.2 is going to be your best bet. Next, if you have $500 that you don't want to flush down the toilet but you don't know what else to do with, you don't need reliable autofocus in low light, and if you want almost imperceptible improvement to your bokeh balls, then definitely the APD 56 1.2 is for you. Finally, if you're new to the Fuji X system, if you don't need low light performance and you don't need weather resistance, but if you want a good solid portrait lens that won't break the bank, then the 60mm 2.4 is going to be a great option for you. Realize that if you get that lens, you're going to get 90% of what the other lenses get you. So now on to our last test. Time for the roll test.